Book 11. Thus they in lowliest plight repentant stood praying, for from the mercy seat above prevenient grace descending had removed the stony from their hearts, and made new flesh regenerate grow instead, that sighs now breathed unutterable, which the spirit of prayer inspired, and winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory. Yet their port not of mean suitors, nor important less seemed their petition, than when the ancient pair in fables old, less ancient than these, do cake Deucalion and chaste Pyrrha to restore the race mankind drowned, before the shrine of Themis stood devout. To heaven their prayers flew up, not missed the way, by envious winds blown vagabond or frustrate. In they passed dimensionless through heavenly doors, then clad with incense, where the golden altar fumed by their great intercessor came in sight before the Father's throne. Then the glad Son presenting, thus to intercede began. See, Father, what first fruits on earth are sprung from thy implanted grace in man, these sighs and prayers, which in this golden censer mixed with incense I, thy priest, before thee bring, fruits of more pleasing savor from thy seed sown with contrition in his heart, than those which his own hand manuring all the trees of paradise could have produced, ere fallen from innocence. Now therefore bend thine ear to supplication. Hear his sighs though mute, unskillful with what words to pray, let me interpret for him, me his advocate in propitiation, all his works on me, good or not good in graft, my merit those shall perfect, and for these my death shall pay. Accept me, and in me from these receive the smell of peace toward mankind. Let him live before thee reconciled, at least his days numbered though sad, till death his doom, which I to mitigate thus plead, not to reverse, to better life shall lead, yield him, where with me all my redeemed may dwell in joy and bliss, made one with me, as I with thee am one. To whom the Father without cloud serene, all thy request for man, accepted Son, obtain. All thy request was my decree. But longer in that paradise to dwell, the law I gave to nature him forbids. Those pure immortal elements that know no growth, no unharmonious mixture foul, eject him tainted now, and purge him off as a distemper, gross to air as gross, and mortal food, is made to dispose him best for dissolution wrought by sin, that first distempered all things, and of incorrupt corrupted. I at first with two fair gifts created him endowed, with happiness and immortality. That fondly lost, this other served but to eternize woe, till I provided death. So death becomes his final remedy, and after life tried in sharp tribulation and refined by faith and faithful works to second life, what waits in the renovation of the just, resigns him up with heaven and earth renewed. But let us call to synod all the blessed through heaven's wide bounds. From them I will not hide my judgments, how from mankind I proceed, as how with peccant angels late they saw, and in their state though firm, stood more confirmed. He ended, and the sun gave signal high to the bright minister that watched. He blew his trumpet, heard in Oreb since perhaps when God descended, and perhaps once more to sound the general doom. The angelic blast filled all the regions, From their blissful bowers of Ameritan shade, fountain or spring, by the waters of life, wherever they sat in fellowships of joy, the sons of light haste, resorting to the summons high, and took their seats, till from his throne supreme the Almighty thus pronounced his sovereign will. O sons, like one of us, man is become to know both good and evil, since his taste of that defended fruit. But let him boast his knowledge of good lost and evil got. Happier had it sufficed him to have known good by itself and evil not at all. He sorrows now, repents, and prays contrite, my motions in him. Longer than they move, his heart I know, how variable and vain self left. Lest therefore his now bolder hand reach also of the tree of life and eat, and live forever, dream at least to live forever. To remove him I decree, and send him from the garden forth to till the ground whence he was taken, fitter soil. Michael, this my behest hast thou in charge. Take to thee from among the cherubim thy choice of flaming warriors, lest the fiend or in behalf of man, nor to invade vacant possession some new trouble raise. Haste thee, and from the paradise of God without remorse drive out this sinful pair, from hallowed ground unholy, and denounce to them and to their progeny from thence perpetual banishment. Yet lest they faint at the sad sentence rigorously urged, for I behold them softened with tears bewailing their excess, all terror hide. If patiently thy bidding they obey, dismiss them, not disconsolate. Reveal to Adam what shall come in future days, as I shall thee enlighten. Intermix my covenant in the woman's seed renewed, so send them forth, though sorrowing, yet in peace. And on the east side of the garden place, where entrance up from Eden easiest climbs, cherubic watch, and of a sword the flame wide waving, all approach far off to fright, and guard all passage to the tree of life, lest paradise a receptacle prove to spirits foul, and all my trees their prey, with whose stolen fruit man once more to delude. He ceased, and the archangelic power prepared for swift descent, with him the cohort bright of watchful cherubim. 4 faces each had, like a double Janus, all their shapes spangled, with eyes more numerous than those of Argus, more wakeful than to drowse, charmed with Arcadian pipe, the pastoral reed of Hermes, or his opiate rod. Meanwhile, to resalute the earth with sacred light, the Leucothea waked, and with fresh dews embalmed the earth, when Adam and his first matron Eve had ended now their orisons, and found strength added from above, new hope to spring out of despair, joy, but yet with fear yet linked, with thus to Eve his welcome words renewed. Eve, easily may faith admit that all the good which we enjoy from heaven descends, but that from us aught should ascend to heaven so prevalent as to concern the mind of God high blessed, or incline his will, hard to believe may seem. Yet this will prayer, or one short sigh of human breath upborne even to the seat of God. For since I sought by prayer the offended deity to appease, kneeled and before him humbled all my heart, methought I saw him placable and mild, bending his ear. Persuasion in me grew that I was heard with favor. Peace returned home to my breast, and to my memory is promised that thy seed shall bruise our foe. Which then not minded in dismay, yet now assures me that the bitterness of death is past, and we shall live. Hence hail to thee, Eve, rightly called, mother of all mankind, mother of all things living, since by thee man is to live, and all things live for man. to whom thus Eve with sad demeanor meek: Ill worthy I such title should belong to me, transgressor, who for thee ordained to help became thy snare. To me reproach rather belongs, distrust and all dispraise, but infinite in pardon was my judge, that I who first brought death on all, am grace the source of life. Next favorable thou, who highly thus to entitle me vouchsafed, far other name deserving. But the field to labor calls us now with sweat and pose, though after sleepless night. For see, the morn, all unconcerned with our unrest, begins her rosy progress smiling. Let us forth. I never from thy side henceforth to stray, where our day's work lies, though now enjoined laborious till day droop. While here we dwell, what can be toilsome in these pleasant walks? Here let us live, though in fallen state, content. So spake, so wished much humbled Eve, but fate subscribed not. Nature first gave signs impressed on bird, beast, air suddenly eclipsed after short blush of morn. Nigh in her sight the bird of Job stooped from his airy tower, two birds of gayest plume before him drove. Down from a hill the beast that reigns in woods, first hunter then, pursued a gentle brace, goodliest of all the forest's hart and hind. Direct to the eastern gate was bet their flight. Adam observed, and with his eye the chase pursuing, not unmoved to Eve thus spake: O Eve, some further change awaits us nigh, which heaven by these mute signs in nature shows forerunners of his purpose, or to warn us happily too secure of our discharge from penalty, because from death release some days. How long, and with what then till our life? Who knows, or more than this, that we are dust, and thither must return and be no more. Why else this double object in our sight of flight, pursued in the air and o'er the ground one way the selfsame hour? Why in the east darkness ere day's mid-course, morning light more orient, and yon western cloud that draws o'er the blue firmament a radiant white, and slow descends with something heavenly fraught? He erred not, for by this the heavenly bands down from a sky of jasper lighted now in paradise, and on a hill made halt, a glorious apparition. Had not doubt and carnal fear that day dimmed Adam's eye. Not that more glorious, when the angels met Jacob in Mahanaim, where he saw the field pavilion with his guardians bright, nor that which on the flaming mount appeared to Dathan, covered with a camp of fire against the Assyrian king, who had to surprise one man assassin-like had levied war unproclaimed. The princely hierarch in their bright stand there left his powers to seize possession of the garden. He alone, to find where Adam sheltered, took his way, not unperceived of Adam, who to Eve, while the great visitant approached, thus spake: Eve, now expect great tidings, which perhaps of us will soon determine, or impose new laws to be observed. For it I descry from yonder blazing cloud that veils the hill one of the heavenly host, and by his gate none of the meanest, some great potentate, or of the thrones above such majesty invests him coming. Yet not terrible that I should fear, nor sociably mild as Raphael that I should much confide, but solemn and sublime, whom not to offend with reverence I must meet, and then retire. He ended, and the archangel soon drew nigh, not in his shape celestial, but as a man clad to meet man. Over his lucid arms a military vest of purple flowed livelier than Melibaean, or the grain of sorrow worn by kings and heroes old in times of truce. Iris had dipped the woof. His starry helm unbuckled showed him prime in manhood where youth ended. By his side, as in the glistering zodiac, hung the sword, Satan's dire dread, and in his hand the spear. Adam bowed low. He, kingly from his state, inclined not, but his coming thus declared. Adam, heaven's high behest no preface needs, sufficient that thy prayers are heard, and death, then due by sentence when thou didst transgress, defeated of his seizure many days given thee of grace, wherein thou mayest repent, and one bad act with many deeds well done mayst cover. Well may then thy Lord appease, redeem thee quite from death's rapacious claim. The longer in this paradise to dwell permits not. To remove thee I come, and send thee from the garden forth to till the ground whence thou wast taken, fitter soil. He added not, for Adam at the news, heart struck with chilling gripe of sorrow stood, that all his senses bound. Eve, who unseen yet all had heard, with audible lament discovered soon the place of her retire. O unexpected stroke worse than of death! Must I leave thee, paradise? Thus leave thee, the native soil, these happy walks and shades, fit haunt for gods, where I had hoped to spend, quiet though sad, the respite of that day that must be mortal to us both. O flowers that never will in other climate grow, my early visitation, in my last at even when I have bred up with tender hand from the first opening bud and gave ye names, who now shall rear ye to the sun, or rank your tribes, or water from the ambrosial fount. Thee, lastly, nuptial bower, by me adorned with what to sight or smell was sweet. From thee how shall I part, and whither wander down into a lower world, to this obscure and wild? How shall we breathe another air less pure, accustomed to immortal fruits? Whom thus the angel interrupted mild. Lament not, Eve, but patiently resign what justly thou hast lost, nor set thy heart thus over fond on that which is not thine. Thy going is not lonely, with thee goes thy husband, him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soil. Adam by this from the cold sudden damp recovering, then his scattered spirits returned to Michael, thus his humble words addressed. Celestial, whether among the thrones or named of them the highest, for such of shape may seem prince above princes, gently hast thou told thy message, which might else in telling wound, and in performing end us. What besides of sorrow and dejection and despair our frailty can sustain, thy tidings bring. Departure from this happy place, our sweet recess, and our only consolation left familiar to our eyes. All places else inhospitable appear and desolate, not knowing us nor known. And if by prayer incessant I could hope to change the will of him who all things can, I would not cease to weary him with my assiduous cries. But prayer against his absolute decree no more avails than breath against the wind, blown stifling back on him that breathes it forth. Therefore to his great bidding I submit. This most afflicts me, that departing hence as from his face I could be hid, deprived his blessed countenance. Here I could frequent with worship, place by place, where he vouchsafed presence designed, and to my sons relate. On this mountain he appeared, under this tree stood visible, among these pines his voice I heard. Here with him at this altar fountain talked. So many graceful altars I would rear of grassy turf, and pile up every stone of luster from the brook, in memory or monument to ages, and thereon offer sweet-smelling gums and fruits and flowers. In yonder nether world, where shall I seek his bright appearances, their footstep trace? For though I fled him angry, yet recalled to life prolonged and promised race, I now gladly behold, though but his utmost skirts of glory, and far off his steps adore. To whom thus Michael with regard benign, Adam, thou knowest heaven's his, and all the earth, not this rock only. His omnipresence fills land, sea, and air, and every kind that lives, fomented by his virtual power and warmed. All the earth he gave thee to possess and rule, no despicable gift. Surmise not then his presence to these narrow bounds confined of paradise or Eden. This had been perhaps thy capital seat, from whence had spread all generations, and had hither come from all the ends of the earth to celebrate and reverence thee, their great progenitor. But this preeminence thou hast lost, brought down to dwell on even ground now with thy sons. Yet doubt not, but in valley and in plain, God is as here, and will be found alike present, and of his presence many a sign still following thee, still compassing thee round with goodness and paternal love, his face express, and of his steps the track divine, which that thou mayest believe and be confirmed, ere thou from hence depart. Know I am sent to show thee what shall come in future days to thee and thy offspring. Good with bad expect to hear, supernal grace contending with sinfulness of men, thereby to learn true patience, and to temper joy with fear and pious sorrow, equally inured by moderation either state to bear, prosperous or adverse. So shalt thou lead safest thy life, and best prepared endure thy mortal passage when it comes. Ascend this hill. Let Eve, for I have drenched her eyes, here sleep below while thou to foresight wakest, as once thou slepst while she to life was formed. To whom thus Adam gratefully replied, Ascend, I follow thee, safe guide. The path thou leadest me into the hand of heaven submit, however chastening to the evil turn my obvious breast, arming to overcome thy suffering, and earn rest from labor won, if so I may attain. So both ascend in the visions of God. It was a hill of paradise the highest, from whose top the hemisphere of earth in clearest ken stretched out to the amplest reach of prospect lay. Not higher that hill, nor wide looking round, whereon for different cause the tempter set our second Adam in the wilderness, to show him all kingdoms and their glory. His eye might there command whatever stood, city of old or modern fame, the seat of mightiest empire, and the destined walls of Cambalu, seat of Cathayan Can, and Samarcand of Oxus, Timir's throne by Pacus of Sanaean kings, and thence to Agra and Lahol of great Mogul, down to the gold Chersones, or where the Persian and Ectaban sat, and since in Hespian, or where the Russian Tsar in Moscow, or the Sultan in Byzance, Turkestan born, nor could his eye not ken the empire of Negris, to his utmost porst or Coco, and the least maritime kings Mombasa and Quiloa and Malin and Sofala thought Ophir, to the realm of Congo and Angola far to south, and thence from Niger flood to Atlas Mount, the kingdoms of Almansor, Fez and Suez, Morocco and Algiers and Trimesen, on Europe thence, and where Rome was to sway the world. In spirit perhaps he saw rich Mexico, the seat of Montezuma, and Cusco in Peru, the richer seat of Atabalapa, and yet unspoiled Guyana, whose great city Garion's sons called El Dorado. But to nobler sights Michael from Adam's eyes the film removed, which had that false fruit that promised clearer sight had bred. then purged with euphrasy and rue the visual nerve, for he had much to see. And from the well of life 3 drops instilled, so deep the power of these ingredients pierced even to the inmost seat of mental sight, that Adam, now enforced to close his eyes, sunk down, and all his spirits became entranced. But him the gentle angel by the hand soon raised, and his attention thus recalled. Adam, now ope thine eyes, and first behold the effects which thine original crime hath wrought, and some to spring from thee, who never touched the accepted tree, nor with the snake conspired, yet nor sin thy sin, yet from that sin derive corruption to bring forth more violent deeds. His eyes he opened, and beheld a field, part arable and tilth, whereon were sheaves new reaped, the other part sheep walks and folds. In the midst an altar as of the landmark stood rustic or grassy sward. Thither and anon a sweaty reaper from his tillage brought first fruits, the green ear and the yellow sheaf unculled as came to hand. A shepherd next, more meek, came with the firstlings of his flock, choicest and best, then sacrificing laid the inwards in their fat, with incense strewed in the cleft woods, and all due rites performed. His offering soon propitious fire from heaven consumed with nimble glance and grateful steam. The others not, for his was not sincere, whereat he inwardly raged, and as they talked smote him into the midriff with a stone that beat out life. He fell, and deadly pale groaned out his soul with gushing blood effused. Much at that sight was Adam in his heart dismayed, and thus in haste to the angel cried, O teacher, some great mischief hath befallen to that meek man, who well had sacrificed. Is piety thus and pure devotion paid? To whom Michael thus he also moved replied, These 2 are brethren, Adam, and to come out of thy loins, the unjust the just hath slain, for envy that his brother's offering found from heaven's acceptance. But the bloody fact will be avenged, and the other's faith approved no less reward, though here thou see him die, rolling in dust and gore. To which our sire, Alas, for both for the deed and the cause, but have I now seen death? Is this the way I must return to native dust? No sight of terror, foul and ugly to behold, horrid to think, how horrible to feel. To whom thus Michael, Death thou hast seen in its first shape on man, but many shapes of death, many are the ways that lead to his grim cave, all dismal, yet to sense more terrible at the entrance than within. Some, as thou sawest, by violent strokes shall die, by fire, flood, famine, by intemperate more in meat and drinks, which on the earth shall bring diseases dire, the which a monstrous crew before thee shall appear, that thou mayest know what misery the abstinence of Eve shall bring on men. Immediately a place before his eyes appeared, sad, noisome, dark, a lazar house it seemed, wherein were laid numbers of all disease, all maladies of ghastly spasm or racking torture, qualms of heart-sick agony, all feverish kinds, convulsion, epilepsies, fierce catarrhs, intense intestine stone and ulcer, colic pangs, demoniac frenzy, moping melancholy, and moonstruck madness, pining atrophy, marasmus, and wide-wasting pestilence, dropsies and asthmas, and joint-racking rheums. Dire was the tossing, deep the groans, despair tended the sick busiest from couch to couch, and over them triumphant death his dart shook, but delayed to strike, though oft invoked with vows as their chief good and final hope. Sight so deformed, what heart of rock could long dry eye behold? Adam could not, but wept, though not of woman born, Compassion quelled the best of men, and gave him up to tears a space, till firmer thoughts restrained excess, and scarce recovering words his plaint renewed. O miserable mankind, to what fall degraded, to what wretched state reserved, better end here unborn. Why is life given to be thus wrested from us? Rather, why obtruded on us thus? Who, if we knew what we receive, would either not accept life offered, or soon beg to lay it down, glad to be so dismissed in peace? Can thus the image of God in man, created once so goodly and erect, though faulty since, to such unsightly sufferings be debased through inhuman pains? Why should not man, retaining still divine similitude, impart from such deformities be free, and for his Maker's image sake exempt? Their Maker's image, answered Michael, then forsook them, when themselves they vilified to serve ungoverned appetite, and took his image whom they served a brutish vice, inductive mainly to the sin of Eve. Therefore so abject is their punishment, disfiguring not God's likeness but their own, nor if his likeness by themselves defaced, while they pervert pure nature's healthful rules to loathful sickness, worthily, since they God's image did not reverence in themselves. I yielded just, said Adam, and submit. But is there yet no other way besides these painful passages, how we may come to death and mix with our connatural dust? There is, said Michael, if thou well observe the rule of not too much, by temperance taught, in what thou eat'st and drinkst, seeking from thence nourishment, nor gluttonous delight, till many years over thy head return. So mayst thou live, till like ripe fruit thou drop into thy mother's lap, nor be with ease gathered, not harshly plucked, for death mature. This is old age. But then thou must outlive thy youth, thy strength, thy beauty, which will change to withered, weak, and gray. Thy senses then obtuse, all taste of pleasure must forego, to what thou hast, and for the air of youth, hopeful and cheerful, in thy blood will reign a melancholy damp of cold and dry to weigh thy spirits down, and last consume the balm of life, to whom our ancestor. Henceforth I fly not death, nor would prolong life much, bent rather how I may quit fairest and easiest of this cumbrous charge, which I must keep to my appointed day of rendering up, and patiently attend my dissolution. Michael replied, nor love thy life nor hate, but what thou livest, live well, how long or short permit to heaven. And now prepare thee for another sight. He looked and saw a spacious plain, whereon were tents of various hue. By some were herds of cattle grazing, other whence the sound of instruments that made melodious chime was heard, of harp and organ, and who moved their stops and chords was seen. His volant touch, instinct through all proportions, low and high, fled and pursued transverse the resonant fugue. In other part stood one who at the forge laboring, two massy clods of iron and brass had melted, whether found where casual fire had wasted woods on mountain or in vale, down to the veins of earth, thence gliding hot to some cave's mouth, nor whether washed by stream from underground. The liquid ore he drained into fit molds prepared, from which he formed first his own tools, then what might else be wrought, fusile or graven in metal. With these, but on the hither side, a different sort from the high neighboring hills, which was their seat, down on the plain descended. By their guise, just men they seemed, and in all their study bent to worship God aright, know his works not hid, nor those things last which might preserve freedom and peace to men. They on the plain long had not walked, when from the tents behold a bevy of fair women, richly gay in gems and wanton dress. To the harp they sung soft amorous ditties, and then in dance came on. The men, though grave, eyed them, and let their eyes rove without rein, till in the amorous net fast caught they liked, and each his liking chose. Now of love they treated, till the evening star love's harbinger appeared. Then all in heat they light the nuptial torch, then bid invoke Hymen, then first to marriage rites invoked. With feast and music all the tents resound, such happy interview and fair event of love and youth not lost. Songs, garlands, flowers, and charming symphonies attach the heart of Adam, soon inclined to admit delight the bent of nature, which he thus expressed. True opener of mine eyes, prime angel blessed, much better seems this vision, and more hope of peaceful days portends than those two past. Those were of hate and death, of pain much worse. Here nature seems fulfilled in all her ends. To whom thus Michael, judge not what is best by pleasure, though to nature seeming meet, created as thou wert to nobler end, holy and pure, conformity divine. Those tents thou sawest so pleasant were the tents of wickedness, wherein shall dwell his race who slew his brother. Industrious they appear of arts that polish life, inventors rare, unmindful of their maker, though his spirit taught them, but they his gifts acknowledge none. Yet they a beauteous offspring shall beget. In that fair female troop thou sawest, that seemed of goddesses, so blithe, so smooth, so gay, yet empty of all good wherein consists woman's domestic honor and chief praise, bred only and completed to the taste of lustful appetence, to sing, to dance, to dress, to troll the tongue and roll the eye. To these that sober race of men, whose lives religious titled them the sons of God, shall yield up all their virtue, all their fame ignobly, to the trains and to the smiles of these fair atheists, now swim in joy, ere long to swim at large, then laugh, for which the world ere long a world of tears must weep. To whom thus Adam of short joy bereft, no pity and shame, that they who lived well, entered so fair, should turn aside to tread paths indirect, nor in the midway faint. But still I see the tenor of man's woe holds on the same, from woman to begin. From man's effeminate slackness it begins, said the angel, who should better hold his place by wisdom and superior gifts received. But now prepare thee for another scene. He looked and saw wide territory spread before him, towns and rural works between, cities of men with lofty gates and towers, concourse of arms, fierce faces threatening war, giants of mighty bone and bold in prize, part wield their arms, part curbed the foaming steed, single or in array of battle, ranged both horse and foot, nor idly mustering stood. One way a band select from forage drives a herd of beeves, fair oxen and fair kine from a fat meadow ground, or fleecy flock using their bleeding lambs over the plain their booty. Scarce with life the shepherds fly, but call for aid, which makes a bloody fray. With cruel tournament the squadrons join, where cattle pastured late now scattering lies with carcasses and arms the ensanguined field deserted. Others to a city strong lay siege, encamped, by battery, scale, and mine assaulting. Others from the wall defend with dart and javelin, stones and sulphurous fire. On each hand slaughter and gigantic deeds. In other part the sceptered heralds called a council in the city gates. Anon gray-headed men and grave with warriors mixed assembled, and harangues are heard. but soon in factious opposition, till at last of middle age, one rising, eminent and wise disport, spake much of right and wrong, of justice, of religion, peace, truth and peace, and judgment from above. Him old and young exploded, and had seized with violent hands, had not a cloud descending snatched him thence, unseen amid the throng. So violence proceeded, and oppression and sword law through all the plain, and refuge none was found. Adam was all in tears, and to his guide, lamenting, turned full sad. No, what are these, death's ministers, not men, who thus deal death inhumanely to man, and multiply 10,000-fold the sin of him who slew his brother? For of whom such massacre make they but of their brethren, men of men? But who was that just man, whom had not heaven rescued, had in his righteousness been lost? To whom thus Michael: these are the product of those ill-mated marriages thou sawest, where good and with bad are matched, who of themselves abhor to join, and by imprudence mixed produce prodigious births of body or mind. Such were these giants, men of high renown. For in those days might only shall be admired, and valor and heroic virtue called. To overcome in battle, and subdue nations, and bring home spoils with infinite manslaughter, shall be held the highest pitch of human glory, and for glory done of triumph, to be styled great conquerors, patrons of mankind, gods and sons of gods, destroyers rightly are called, and plagues of men. Thus fame shall be achieved, renown on earth, and what most merits fame in silence hid. But he, the seventh from thee, whom thou beheldst, the only righteous in a world perverse, and therefore hated, therefore so beset with foes, daring single to be just, and utter odious truth, that God would come to judge them with his saints. Him the Most High wrapped in a balmy cloud with winged steeds did, as thou sawest receive, to walk with God high in salvation, in the climes of bliss exempt from death, to show thee what reward awaits the good, the rest what punishment, which now direct thine eyes, and soon behold. He looked and saw the face of things quite changed. The brazen throat of war had ceased to roar. All now was turned to jollity and game, to luxury and riot, feast and dance, marrying and prostituting as befell, rape or adultery, where passing fair allured them, thence from cups to civil broils. At length the reverend sire among them came, and of their doings great dislike declared, and testified against their ways. He oft frequented their assemblies, where so met triumphs or festivals, and to them preached conversion and repentance, as to souls imprisoned under judgment imminent, but all in vain. Which when he saw, he ceased contending, and removed his tents far off. Then from the mountain-hewing timber tall began to build a vessel of huge bulk, measured by cubic length and breadth and height, smeared round with pitch, and in the side a door contrived, and of provisions laid and large for man and beast. When lo, a wonder strange, of every beast and bird and insect small came sevens and pairs, and entered in, as taught their order. Last the sire and his 3 sons with their 4 wives, and God made fast the door. Meanwhile the south wind rose, and with black wings wide hovering, all the clouds together drove from under heaven, the hills to their supply, vapor and exhalation, dusk and moist, sent up amain. Now the thickened sky like a dark ceiling stood. Down rushed the rain impetuous, and continued till the earth no more was seen. The floating vessel swam uplifted, and secure with peaked prow rode tilting o'er the waves, all dwellings else flood overwhelmed, and with them all their pomp deep under water rolled. Sea-covered sea, sea without shore, and in their palaces where luxury late reigned, sea monsters whelped and stabled. The mankind so numerous late all left, in one small bottom swum embarked. How didst thou grieve then, Adam, to behold the end of all thy offspring, and so sad depopulation? Thee another flood of tears and sorrow will flood thee also drown, and sunk thee as thy sons, till gently reared by the angel, in thy feet thou stoodst at last, though comfortless, as when a father mourns his children, all in view destroyed at once. And scarce the angel uttered thus thy plaint: O visions ill foreseen! Better had I lived ignorant of the future, so had borne my part of evil only, each day's lot enough to bear. Those now that were dispensed the burden of many ages, on me light at once, by my foreknowledge gaining birth abortive, to torment me ere their being, with thought that they must be. Let no man seek henceforth to be foretold what shall befall him or his children. Evil he may be sure, which neither his foreknowing can prevent, and he the future evil shall no less in apprehension than in substance feel grievous to bear. But that care now is past. Man is not whom to warn. Those few escaped famine and anguish will at last consume, wandering that watery desert. I had hope when violence was ceased, and war on earth all would have gone well. Peace would have crowned with length of happy days the race of man. But I was deceived, for now I see peace to corrupt no less than war to waste. What comes it thus? Unfold, celestial guide, and whether here the race of men will end. To whom thus Michael: Those whom last thou sawest in triumph and luxurious wealth, are they first seen in acts of great prowess, eminent in great exploits, though of true virtue void, who having spilt much blood and done much waste, subduing nations, and achieving thereby fame in the world, high titles and rich prey, shall change their course to pleasure, ease, and sloth, surfeit and lust, to wantonness and pride, raise out of friendship hostile deeds in peace. The conquered also and enslaved by war shall with their freedom lost all virtue lose and fear of God, from whom their piety feigned and sharp contest of battle found now no aid against invaders. Therefore cooled in zeal, thenceforth shall practice how to live secure, worldly or dissolute, on what their lords shall leave them to enjoy. For the earth shall bear more than enough that temperance may be tried, so all shall turn degenerate, all depraved, justice and temperance, truth and faith forgot. One man only, the only son of light in a dark age, against example good, against allurement custom, and in a world offended, fearless of reproach and scorn of violence, he of their wicked ways shall them admonish, and before them set the paths of righteousness. How much more safe and full of peace, denouncing wrath to come of their impenitence, and shall return of them derided. But of God observed, the one just man alive, by his command shall build a wondrous ark as thou behell'st, to save himself and household from amidst a world devote to universal wrack. No sooner he with them of man and beast select for life shall in the ark be lodged and sheltered round, but all the cataracts of heaven set open on the earth shall pour rain day and night. All fountains of the deep broke up shall heave the ocean to usurp beyond all bounds, till inundation rise above the highest hills. Then shall this mount of paradise by might of waves be moved out of his place, pushed by the horned flood. with all his virtue bespoiled, and trees adrift on the great river to the opening gulf, and there take root and isle and salt and bare, the haunt of seals and orcs and sea mews clang, to teach thee that God as God attributes to place no sanctity, if none be thither brought by men who there frequent or therein dwell. And now what further shall ensue, behold. He looked and saw the ark hull on the flood, which now abated, for the clouds were fled, driven by a keen north wind that, blowing dry, wrinkled the face of the deluge as decayed. And the clear sun and the wide watery glass glazed hot, and of the fresh wave largely drew, as after thirst, which made their flowing shrink from standing lake to tripping ebb, that stole with swift foot toward the deep, who now had stopped his sluices as the heaven his windows shut. An ark no more now floats, but seems on ground fast on top of some high mountain fixed. And now the tops of hills as rocks appear, and with clamor thence the rapid currents drive toward the retreating sea their furious tide. Forthwith from out the ark a raven flies, and after him the sure messenger, a dove sent forth once and again to spy green tree or ground whereon his foot may light. The second time returning, in his bill an olive leaf he brings, pacific sign. Anon dry ground appears, and from his ark the ancient sire descends with all his train. Then, with uplifted hands and eyes devout, grateful to heaven, over his head beholds a dewy cloud, and in the cloud a bow conspicuous, with three listed colors gay, beckoning peace from God and covenant new, whereat the heart of Adam, erst so sad, greatly rejoiced, and thus his joy broke forth. O thou who future things canst represent as present, heavenly instructor, I revive at this last sight, assured that man shall live with all the creatures and their seed preserve. Far less I now lament for one whole world of wicked sons destroyed, than I rejoice for one man found so perfect and so just, that God vouchsafes to raise another world from him, and all his anger to forget. But say, what mean these colored streaks in heaven? Distended as the brow of God appeased, or serve they as the flowery verge to bind the fluid skirts of that same watery cloud, lest it again dissolve and shower the earth? To whom the archangel, dexterously thou aim'st, so willingly doth God remit his ire, though late repenting him of man depraved, grieved at his heart, when looking down he saw the whole world filled with violence, and all flesh corrupting each their way. Yet these removed, such grace shall one just man find in his sight, that he relents not to blot out mankind, and makes a covenant never to destroy the earth again by flood, nor let the sea surpass his bounds, nor rain to drown the world with man therein or beast. But when he brings o'er the earth a cloud, will therein set his triple-colored bow, whereon to look and call to mind his covenant. Day and night, seed time and harvest, heat and hoary frost shall hold their course, till fire purges all things new, both heaven and earth, wherein the just shall dwell.